Captain Jake Morrison stood at the front window of his ship and watched something impossible appear in front of them. The massive structure looked like a city floating in space, with lights that pulsed in colors he had never seen before. His ship, the Terra Nova, was the size of 3 football fields, but next to this alien creation, it looked like a toy boat next to a mountain. "Sir, we are getting a message," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She looked nervous as she pressed buttons on her control panel. "It is coming through on all frequencies at once." Jake nodded and walked to the center of his bridge. Around him, his crew of 25 people stared at their screens in wonder and fear. They had been exploring space for 6 months, looking for new worlds that humans could live on. Earth was getting crowded and people needed new places to go. But finding intelligent aliens had not been part of their plan. The main screen flickered and showed a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. It had no face that Jake could recognize, but somehow he knew it was looking directly at him. When it spoke, the words appeared in his mind rather than his ears. "Greetings, representatives of humanity. I am Vex Amara of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your species for some time. Your rapid expansion through your local star systems has caught our attention. We wish to extend to you an invitation that has never been offered to any species upon first contact." Dr. Lisa Hamilton, the ship's expert on alien life, stepped forward. She was a small woman with short brown hair and eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something complicated. "Captain, this is highly unusual. According to everything we know about first contact protocols, advanced civilizations usually study new species for decades before making any formal contact." Jake held up his hand to quiet her. He wanted to hear what this crystal being had to say. The alien continued speaking in that strange way that bypassed his ears entirely. "The Galactic Council governs this sector of space. 47 different intelligent species work together to maintain peace and order across thousands of star systems. We have existed in harmony for over 10,000 of your years. Today, we offer humanity immediate membership in our council." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet humming of the ship's engines. Commander Alex Carter, Jake's second in command, walked over to stand beside him. Alex was a tall man with gray hair who had served in Earth's military for 20 years, before joining the space exploration program. "Sir, we should contact Earth immediately," Alex said quietly. "Admiral Karen Brooks needs to know about this." Jake nodded, but kept his eyes on the alien. "Vex Amara, your offer is very generous, but we will need to speak with our leaders on Earth before we can give you an answer." "Of course. We understand that such decisions require careful thought. We will escort you to Nexus Prime, our central station, where you can communicate with your home world through our advanced communication systems. The delay will be only minutes instead of the months your current technology requires." Dr. Hamilton moved closer to Jake and whispered, "Captain, something feels wrong about this. Why would they offer us membership so quickly? Most alien contact scenarios predict years of careful study and negotiation before any formal relationships are established." Jake looked at her, and then back at the screen where Vex Amara waited patiently. The crystal being seemed to shimmer with internal light, and Jake wondered if it could hear their whispered conversation. "Your concerns are understandable, Dr. Hamilton," Vex Amara said, confirming Jake's suspicion. "However, time is important in this matter. Other species in this region of space have observed your expansion. Some view humanity as a potential threat. By bringing you into the Council quickly, we can ensure peaceful relations for everyone involved." Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her station. "Captain, I am detecting massive energy signatures from their station. Their technology level is far beyond anything we have on Earth. If they wanted to harm us, we would not be able to stop them." Jake made his decision. They had come out here to make contact with other intelligent life and to find humanity's place among the stars. This was exactly what they had hoped for, even if it was happening faster than anyone expected. "Vex Amara, we accept your invitation to visit Nexus Prime. We will speak with our leaders and give you our answer soon." The crystal being's form brightened, which Jake interpreted as pleasure or satisfaction. "Excellent. Please follow the guidance signals we are sending to your ship. The journey to Nexus Prime will take approximately 6 of your hours. As the Terra Nova began to move toward the alien station, Jake watched the structure grow larger and larger. He could see ships of dozens of different designs moving around it like insects around a flower. Some were sleek and metallic. Others seemed to be made of organic materials that pulsed with life. A few appeared to be pure energy contained in force fields. "Captain," said Dr. Hamilton, studying her instruments, "I am reading life signs from at least 20 different species on that station. The biological diversity is incredible. Some of them do not even seem to have physical bodies as we understand them." Commander Carter stood beside the navigation controls, watching the alien ships. Their formation flying is perfect. Look at how they move together without any apparent communication delays. They have been doing this for a very long time. As they got closer to Nexus Prime, Jake could see that it was even more massive than he had first thought. The station was shaped like a giant flower with multiple levels and sections extending in all directions. Lights moved along its surface in patterns that reminded him of blood flowing through veins. "Incoming message from Earth," announced Lieutenant Foster. "Admiral Brooks wants to speak with you immediately." Jake nodded. "Put her through." Admiral Karen Brooks appeared on the side screen. She was a stern woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen many difficult decisions. "Captain Morrison, our long-range sensors have detected the alien structure. What is your status?" "Admiral, we have made first contact with something called the Galactic Council. They have offered humanity immediate membership in their organization. We are currently approaching their central station to open formal communications with Earth." The Admiral was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. "Captain, this is the opportunity humanity has been waiting for. We need allies and advanced technology if we are going to survive and grow as a species. Do whatever it takes to secure this alliance." "Understood, Admiral. We will proceed carefully, but positively." As the Terra Nova moved into the docking area of Nexus Prime, Jake looked around at his crew. They were about to become the first humans to walk among dozens of alien species. Whatever happened next would change the course of human history forever. None of them could have imagined that their presence would change the course of galactic history as well. The first sign that something was wrong came 72 hours after humanity officially joined the Galactic Council. Commander Alex Carter was reviewing daily reports in his temporary quarters aboard Nexus Prime when Lieutenant Amy Foster burst through his door without knocking. "Sir, we have lost all contact with the hegemony of Krathtos," she said, her face pale with worry. 12 star systems, millions of beings, and they just went completely silent. Alex set down his datapad and looked at her carefully. The Krathtos had been one of the most powerful military forces in the Council. Their representatives had been among the most vocal supporters of humanity's membership just days ago. "Define silent, Lieutenant." "No communications, no ship movements, no energy signatures from their colonies. It is like their entire civilization just stopped existing overnight." Amy handed him a report filled with readings that made no sense. "Our sensors show their planets are still there, but no signs of active civilization." Alex grabbed his uniform jacket and headed for the door. "Contact Captain Morrison immediately. And find Dr. Hamilton. If an entire civilization can vanish in 3 days, we need to know why." As Alex walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, he noticed something else strange. The station felt different than it had when they first arrived. The alien beings he passed seemed nervous, moving faster than before and avoiding eye contact with humans. Even the crystalline maintenance workers who had been curious about human biology now kept their distance. He found Captain Jake Morrison in the council chambers, sitting across from Vex Amara and 2 other council representatives. The room was enormous, with seats designed for dozens of different body types. Most of the seats were empty now, which was unusual for the normally busy council. "Captain, we need to talk," Alex said quietly. Jake looked up and saw the worry in his second-in-command's face. "Vex Amara, I apologize, but I need to speak with my officer privately." The crystal being's inner light flickered in what Alex had learned was their way of showing concern. "Of course, Captain Morrison. However, I must tell you that we are also experiencing some unusual situations that may require council attention." Jake and Alex stepped into a smaller room nearby. What is it, Alex? The Krathtos Empire has gone completely dark. 12 systems, all silent. Amy says it is like they just stopped existing. Alex handed Jake the report. And that is not all. The aliens on this station are acting strange around us. They seem almost afraid. Jake studied the data, his expression growing more serious with each page. This does not make sense. The Krathtos were a stable civilization for thousands of years. Militaristic, but stable. They do not just disappear. There is more, sir. I have been monitoring communications between the other species. They are all reporting unusual incidents since we arrived. Equipment failures, communication problems, social disturbances. Nothing major individually, but when you add it all up, it paints a disturbing picture, Jake finished. Let me find Dr. Hamilton. She has been working with the Vorthak scholars in their cultural exchange program. Maybe they know something. They found Dr. Lisa Hamilton in the research section of the station, surrounded by holographic displays showing the biological and social structures of various council species. She was deep in conversation with 3 Vorthak, tall beings that looked like walking trees with multiple arms and eyes that changed color based on their emotions. Dr. Hamilton, we need to speak with you urgently, Jake said. Lisa looked up from her work, and Jake could see excitement in her eyes. Captain, I think I have discovered something incredible. The Vorthak have been explaining their theories about psychological compatibility between species, and I think I understand why we were invited to join the council so quickly. That can wait, Alex interrupted. Right now we need to know if your new friends have any information about the Krathtos disappearance. Lisa's expression changed from excitement to confusion. What disappearance? I spoke with Ambassador Krexthai just yesterday during the welcoming ceremony. Jake explained what they had discovered, and watched as Lisa's face went pale. She turned to the Vorthak and spoke in their clicking language, which she had been learning since their arrival. The response she got made her sit down heavily in the nearest chair. What did they say? Alex asked. They said the Krathtos started having problems the day after we arrived. Internal conflicts, breakdowns in their command structure, ships refusing, orders from their homeworlds. The Vorthak thought it was just a coincidence. Lisa looked up at them with wide eyes. But Captain, what they told me earlier about psychological compatibility might explain everything. Go on, Jake said. Every intelligent species in the Galactic Council evolved from one of 3 basic social structures. Either they were hive, minds like the Vorthak, where individual identity is secondary to group consciousness, or they developed strict hierarchical systems like the Krathtos, where every individual has a specific place and role that never changes, or they formed symbiotic relationships with their environment, like the ethereal collective, where individual desires are balanced against the needs of the whole. Alex frowned. And humans? Humans are none of those things. We are individuals who can work together or apart, who can change our roles and positions in society, who can create new solutions to problems instead of following established patterns. According to the Vorthak, this should be psychologically impossible for an intelligent species. Jake felt a cold sensation in his stomach. Are you saying that our very existence is causing problems for these other species? I think our presence is proving to them that their way of living is not the only way possible. And for species that have lived the same way for thousands of years, that realization might be devastating. Lisa stood up and began pacing. Think about it. The Krathtos have lived in a rigid military hierarchy for their entire history. Every individual knows exactly what their role is and never questions it. But then they meet humans, and they see that intelligent beings can be successful while making their own choices about their lives and careers. That could be very disturbing for someone who has never had to make choices, Alex agreed. The Vorthak made a series of rapid clicks and Lisa's eyes went wide. She translated quickly. He says that other species are reporting similar problems. The merchant syndicate is having trade disputes for the first time in centuries. Some of their member species are trying to establish exclusive trading relationships with human colonies instead of following the traditional group agreements. Jake activated his communication device. Morrison to all human personnel. Report to the main conference room immediately. We have a situation. As they walked through the station toward their meeting point, Alex noticed that the corridors were much emptier than they had been even a few hours earlier. Many of the alien shops and services had closed their doors, and the few beings they did see moved quickly past them without the curious looks they had received during their first days on the station. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Foster as they entered the conference room, "I have more bad news. We are receiving distress signals from across the galaxy. The peaceful unity of worlds is reporting internal conflicts. The symbiotic networks are experiencing communication breakdowns. Even the ancient preservers are calling for emergency council sessions." Dr. Hamilton sat down at the table and pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red warning lights were appearing faster than she could count them. "It is spreading. Whatever effect we are having, it is moving from species to species through their communication networks." Jake looked around the table at his crew. They were just 25 humans who had come to space looking for new worlds to settle. None of them had intended to cause problems for anyone. The question is, what do we do about it? We cannot just pretend this is not happening. "Maybe we should leave," suggested Lieutenant Foster. "If our presence is causing these problems, maybe we should go back to our own sector of space." "But that might not stop what has already started," Alex pointed out. "If the knowledge that humans exist is enough to cause these problems, then leaving might not help." Dr. Hamilton looked up from her displays with a grim expression. "I think it is too late for that anyway. Look at this." She pointed to the galactic map where more than half of the council species were now showing warning signals. "This is not just about us anymore. This is about what we represent. We have shown them that their way of life is not the only possibility for intelligent beings." Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the alien ships still moving around Nexus Prime. But there were fewer of them now, and those that remained seemed to be leaving as quickly as they could. "We came here hoping to find our place among the stars. Instead, we may have accidentally destroyed the very civilization we wanted to join." As if to confirm his fears, Vexamara's voice suddenly filled the room through the communication system. "Captain Morrison, please report to the emergency council session immediately. The situation has become critical. Several more civilizations have ceased all communication, and others are demanding immediate action." Jake looked around at his crew one more time. "It looks like we are about to find out just how critical things have become." The emergency council session was unlike anything Captain Jake Morrison had seen since arriving at Nexus Prime. The massive chamber that had once held representatives from 47 species now contained barely half that number. Empty seats, designed for beings of all shapes and sizes, stood like silent monuments to civilizations that were no longer responding to council communications. Vexamara stood at the center of the chamber, their crystalline form pulsing with agitated red light. Around them, the remaining representatives argued in a dozen different languages, their universal translators struggling to keep up with the rapid exchanges of fear and anger. "Order! We must have order!" Vexamara's mental voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The chamber fell silent except for the low humming sounds made by the gas-breathing Nebular Collective. "In the 14 days since humanity joined our council, we have lost contact with 9 entire civilizations. This is unprecedented in our 10,000-year history." Ambassador Thys of the Hierarchs, a tall reptilian being with scales that shifted, color based on his emotional state, pointed one clawed finger directly at Jake. "The correlation is obvious. These collapses began immediately after the humans arrived. They must be removed from the council before more damage is done." Dr. Lisa Hamilton, sitting beside Jake in the human delegation area, leaned forward in her chair. "With respect, Ambassador Thys, we have done nothing to cause these problems. We have followed all council protocols and have made no aggressive actions toward any species." "Your very existence is an aggressive action," replied Counselor Vorthma of the symbiotic networks. The being looked like a collection of different organisms that had grown together into one body, with multiple heads that spoke in harmony. "You represent chaos where we have maintained order for millennia." Commander Alex Carter stood up slowly, his military training helping him stay calm despite the hostile atmosphere. Counselor, could you explain what you mean by chaos? We are simply individuals making our own choices about our lives and work. How is that threatening to your civilization? The symbiotic network's representative made a sound that the universal translator could not interpret, but the meaning seemed clear from the way other aliens moved away from the human delegation. Your species functions without proper integration. Each individual acts according to personal desires, rather than the needs of the whole. This should result in immediate social collapse, yet your civilization thrives. This impossibility is spreading through our communication networks like a disease. Communications Officer Maya Johnson, who had been monitoring galactic transmissions since the crisis began, activated a holographic display above the chamber. The galaxy map showed red warning zones spreading like fire across space. The pattern is clear. Species that have had direct contact with human transmissions are experiencing the most severe disruptions. Jake studied the display and felt his stomach drop. The red zones were expanding along the same routes that human exploration ships had taken over the past several years. You are saying that even before we made official contact, our presence was already affecting other civilizations? Precisely, said Elder Zafara of the Ethereal Collective. The ancient being appeared as a shifting cloud of energy contained within a force field, and when they spoke, lights flickered throughout the chamber. Our long-range sensors detected your expansion patterns 3 of your years ago. We have been monitoring the psychological effects of your existence on nearby species since that time. Dr. Hamilton's eyes widened as she understood the implication. You invited us to join the Council not as an honor, but as a containment strategy. You hoped that by bringing us under Council authority, you could control the damage we were causing simply by existing. Vexamara's crystalline form flickered between different colors before settling on a deep blue that Jake had learned indicated deep concern. The strategy was sound in theory. However, we underestimated the extent of your psychological impact. Direct contact with humans has proven far more disruptive than we anticipated. What kind of disruptions are we talking about? Alex asked. Elder Zafara's energy form pulsed brighter as they answered. The Ethereal Collective has existed as a unified consciousness for 8,000 years. Individual identity was abandoned long ago as inefficient and counterproductive. However, after extended contact with human thought patterns, our collective has begun fragmenting. Individual entities are separating from the whole and demanding what you call personal autonomy. Ambassador Theiss added his own species' problems to the list. The hierarchs have maintained perfect social order through our caste system for 6,000 years. Each individual knows their place and function from birth to death. But exposure to human concepts of social mobility and career choice has caused our lower castes to question their positions. We are experiencing the first civil unrest in our recorded history. Maya Johnson looked up from her communication station with fresh alarm. Captain, I am receiving reports of new collapses. The technosynthesis has split into competing factions after their artificial intelligence networks began exhibiting what they call creative chaos patterns. The peaceful unity of worlds is engaged in their first armed conflict in 8,000 years. Jake stood up and addressed the remaining council members directly. We never intended for any of this to happen. Humanity came to space looking for friends and allies, not to destroy civilizations. Tell us what we can do to help fix this situation. Counselor Vorthma of the symbiotic networks made that untranslatable sound again. You cannot fix what you are. Your species represents a fundamental challenge to the natural order of intelligent life. Every stable civilization in this galaxy has evolved beyond individual chaos. You prove that such evolution may not be necessary, and that knowledge is destroying everything we have built. Dr. Richard Stone, the mission's specialist in alien cultures, had been quietly studying his instruments throughout the session. Now he looked up with a disturbed expression. Captain, I think I understand what is happening. These civilizations have achieved stability by eliminating the unpredictable elements of individual choice and creativity. But they have also eliminated the ability to adapt to new situations. When confronted with evidence that their rigid systems are not the only way intelligent beings can organize themselves, they cannot adapt. Their social structures are collapsing because they were never designed to handle fundamental challenges to their basic assumptions about life. Elder Zephyra's energy form contracted into a tighter configuration. Your analysis is correct, human scientist. We achieved peace and stability by creating predictable social systems, but we also eliminated the flexibility that your species retains. We cannot adapt to the knowledge that our way is not the only way. Vexamara moved to the center of the chamber, their form now pulsing with rapid flashes of different colors. The question before this council is simple. Do we attempt to eliminate the human threat to preserve what remains of galactic civilization? Or do we accept that the age of stability has ended and prepare for whatever comes next? The chamber fell silent as the implications of that choice sank in. Jake looked around at the alien representatives and realized that they were terrified. These were beings whose civilizations had existed for thousands of years without major changes, and now they faced the possibility that everything they knew was about to disappear. There is a third option, Jake said quietly. We could work together to find a new way forward. Humans have experience dealing with change and uncertainty. Maybe we can help your species learn to adapt instead of collapse. Ambassador Thais stood up abruptly, his scales turning the deep red color that indicated rage. Help? You offer to help after destroying everything we have built? Your very existence is incompatible with civilized society. Then maybe civilized society needs to change, Alex said firmly. From what we have seen, your idea of civilization requires every individual to give up their personal freedom and creativity. That is not civilization. That is imprisonment. The argument that followed was so intense that the universal translators began failing under the strain of translating multiple species shouting at once. Jake realized that they had reached the point where words would no longer solve the problem. The galaxy was splitting into two incompatible views of how intelligent life should organize itself, and there might not be any middle ground. As emergency, alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime, indicating more civilizations going silent. Jake made a decision that would affect the future of both humanity and the galaxy. Commander Carter, contact the Terra Nova. Tell them to prepare for immediate departure. Dr. Hamilton, gather all our research data. We need to get this information back to Earth before the situation gets any worse. Where are we going, Captain? Maya asked. Jake looked around the council chamber one more time at the empty seats and frightened faces of beings whose worlds were falling apart. We are going home to warn Earth about what we have started, because I have a feeling that this is just the beginning. 3 weeks after humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, Captain Jake Morrison stood in his quarters aboard the Terra Nova watching his home galaxy tear itself apart. The main display showed a real-time map of known civilizations, and more than half of them were now marked with red warning indicators. What had started as isolated incidents had become a cascade failure, affecting billions of beings across thousands of star systems. Captain, priority transmission from Earth, announced Lieutenant Amy Foster over the ship's communication system. Her voice carried the strain of someone who had been working around the clock monitoring the galactic crisis. Jake activated his personal communication terminal, and Admiral Karen Brooks appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked older than she had 3 weeks ago, her silver hair now completely white and new lines of stress around her eyes. Captain Morrison, the situation here is becoming critical. Our colonies are being overwhelmed by refugees from collapsing civilizations. Ships full of displaced beings are arriving at our outposts faster than we can process them. We have millions of aliens seeking shelter in human space, and more arriving every day. Jake sat down heavily in his chair. Admiral, what kind of numbers are we looking at? The latest count shows refugees from over 20 different species. Some are fleeing civil wars that started when their social systems collapsed. Others are abandoning their homeworlds entirely because their governments have ceased to function. The Zephyrians, who used to control energy production for half the galaxy, are now scattered individuals looking for any work they can find. Dr. Lisa Hamilton appeared in Jake's doorway, carrying a datapad filled with the latest reports from across the galaxy. Captain, I have been analyzing the pattern of collapses, and I think I understand why this is happening so quickly. Come in, Doctor. Admiral, Dr. Hamilton has been studying the sociological aspects of this crisis. Lisa moved to where Admiral Brooks could see her on the screen. Admiral, every civilization in the Galactic Council had achieved stability by eliminating individual variation in behavior and thought. The Krathtos did it through rigid military hierarchy. The Ethereal Collective did it by merging all individual consciousness into one group mind. The symbiotic networks did it by making every individual dependent on the group for survival. And now they are all collapsing because they met humans, the Admiral said grimly. Not exactly. They are collapsing because they discovered that intelligent beings can thrive without giving up individual freedom and creativity. For species that have not had to make personal choices for thousands of years, this realization is psychologically devastating. They simply do not know how to handle the concept that there might be other ways to live. Commander Alex Carter joined them, carrying reports from the other human ships scattered throughout the region. Captain, I have updates from our exploration fleet. The situation is getting worse everywhere we go. Captain Ben Roberts on the horizon reports that 3 more civilizations went silent yesterday. Captain Susan Davis on the Pioneer says that some of the refugee groups are fighting each other because they have different ideas about how to rebuild their societies. Jake rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility for a crisis that no human had intended to cause. Alex, what about the civilizations that are still functioning? Are any of them adapting successfully? Actually, yes. The Adaptive Collective, a smaller group of species near the rim of the galaxy, seem to be handling the transition better than most. They were already more flexible in their social structures, so learning about human individualism was less shocking for them. They are actually requesting formal contact with us. Admiral Brooks leaned forward on the screen. That might be our best hope for a positive outcome. If some species can adapt to coexistence with humanity, maybe we can build new alliances to replace the Council. Dr. Hamilton looked up from her datapad with a concerned expression. Admiral, there is something else you need to know. We have discovered evidence that this has happened before in galactic history. The archivists, an ancient species that keeps historical records, showed us data about a similar event 67,000 years ago. Another species like humanity? Admiral Brooks asked. Not exactly like us, but close enough. They called themselves the Liberators, and they had similar psychological characteristics to humans. Individual creativity, adaptability, the ability to thrive in uncertain situations. When they made contact with the galactic civilization of their time, it caused the same kind of cascade failure we are seeing now. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What happened to them? The galactic powers of that era formed a military alliance and destroyed them completely. Every world, every ship, every individual of their species was eliminated. The survivors among the other species then rebuilt galactic civilization specifically to prevent another species like the Liberators from arising. But humanity evolved independently, far from their influence, Alex pointed out, which is why our existence is so terrifying to them. They thought they had solved the problem of chaotic individualism forever, and then we appeared to prove them wrong. Admiral Brooks was quiet for a long moment, then spoke with the voice of someone making a difficult military decision. Captain Morrison, I am ordering all human exploration ships to return to Earth space immediately. We need to consolidate our forces and prepare for the possibility that history might repeat itself. Admiral, what about the refugees? We cannot just abandon millions of beings who are seeking our help. We will do what we can for them, but our first responsibility is to the survival of humanity. If the remaining Council species decide to eliminate us like they did the Liberators, we need to be ready to defend ourselves. Communications Officer Maya Johnson's voice came over the intercom with urgency that made everyone stop talking. Captain, we are receiving a massive transmission from Nexus Prime. It is being broadcast to all human ships simultaneously. Put it through, Jake ordered. The screen changed to show Vexamara, but the crystal being looked different than before. Their internal light was dim and flickered irregularly, and cracks were visible along their surface. Behind them, the Great Council chamber was nearly empty. with only a handful of representatives remaining. Captain Morrison, I am speaking to you as the last acting representative of the Galactic Council. In the 23 days since humanity joined our organization, 31 of our 47 member civilizations have ceased to exist as functioning societies. The remaining species have voted to dissolve the Council and take independent action to address the crisis. Jake felt his heart sink. Vexamara, we never wanted this to happen. Tell us how we can help fix the situation. Captain, you cannot fix what you are. Your species represents a fundamental incompatibility with stable galactic civilization. However, I must also tell you that not all of the remaining species blame humanity for this crisis. Some have come to believe that our rigid social systems were the real problem, and that your arrival simply exposed weaknesses that already existed. What does that mean for the future? Dr. Hamilton asked. It means that the galaxy is dividing into two groups, those who want to eliminate humanity and return to the old ways, and those who want to learn from humanity and create new ways of organizing society. I fear that this division will lead to a galactic war, unlike anything we have seen in our recorded history. Alex stepped closer to the screen. Which side are you on, Vexamara? The crystal being's form flickered with what might have been sadness. My own species is fragmenting, Captain Carter. Some of us believe that change is necessary even if it is painful. Others believe that stability must be preserved at any cost. I no longer speak for all of my people, only for those who choose adaptation over destruction. Admiral Brooks reappeared on a split screen. Vexamara, what can you tell us about the military capabilities of the species that want to eliminate humanity? Admiral Brooks, I must warn you that some of the surviving military powers are already forming what they call the Restoration Alliance. Their goal is to eliminate the human threat and rebuild galactic civilization along the old lines. They have technologies that are far advanced beyond your current capabilities. Jake looked around at his crew and felt the weight of history settling on their shoulders. So we have a choice. We can retreat to our own small corner of the galaxy and hope they leave us alone, or we can stand and fight for the right of all intelligent beings to choose their own way of life. There is a third option, Vexamara said quietly. You can help those of us who want to build something new. The galaxy will never return to what it was before humanity arrived. The question now is whether what comes next will be better or worse than what we lost. Admiral Brooks made her decision with the speed that had made her a successful military leader. Captain Morrison, you have new orders. Contact all human ships and friendly alien groups. It is time to build a new alliance based on freedom and adaptability instead of rigid control. If there is going to be a war for the future of galactic civilization, humanity will not face it alone. As the transmission ended, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of galaxy his children would inherit. The age of the Galactic Council was over. 6 months after the collapse of the Galactic Council, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, watching ships from a dozen different species work together to build humanity's first joint alien-human colony. The old rigid boundaries between civilizations had been replaced by something messier, but more alive, a chaotic network of alliances, partnerships, and experimental communities that changed almost daily. The station itself represented everything the old council had thought impossible. Humans worked alongside former ethereal collective individuals who had chosen to maintain separate identities. Refugee Krathtos built new lives as merchants and engineers instead of following their ancient military castes. Young beings from species that had never allowed personal choice were learning to make decisions about their own futures for the first time in their lives. Captain, we have a problem, said Commander Alex Carter as he approached with a datapad full of reports. His tone was serious, but Jake had learned to read the difference between everyday crisis and real emergency. This sounded like everyday crisis. What kind of problem, Alex? The good kind, actually. We have more refugee applications than we can process. The Adaptive Coalition wants to establish 3 new joint colonies in the next month. The Free Symbiotic Networks are requesting technical assistance to rebuild their communication systems without forced mental linking. and the independent hierarchs are asking for help establishing democratic governments on their liberated worlds. Jake smiled and took the data pad. In the old days, before first contact, a report like this would have seemed like an impossible fantasy. Different alien species working together by choice rather than ancient treaty, experimenting with new ways of organizing their societies, asking humans for advice instead of seeing them as a threat. Any word from Earth about the new colonial expansion program? Jake asked. Admiral Brooks sent a message this morning. The Colonial Administration has approved funding for 50 new mixed-species settlements. They are calling it the Diversity Initiative, and they want you to oversee the program. Dr. Lisa Hamilton joined them, carrying her own stack of reports and looking tired but satisfied. She had been working 18-hour days helping refugee species adapt to the psychological challenges of individual freedom, and the work was showing results. Captain, I have updates from the adaptation centers. The success rate for individual transition therapy has improved to 87%. Most beings who complete the program successfully integrate into mixed communities within 6 months. What about the remaining 13%? Alex asked. Some choose to return to traditional collective communities, which is fine. We have several settlements designed specifically for beings who prefer group consciousness, but want to maintain peaceful relations with individualistic species. Others need longer transition periods. Freedom can be terrifying when you have never experienced it before. Jake nodded and looked out at the construction work continuing around the station. Not all of the changes had been positive. The collapse of the old galactic order had led to conflicts and suffering that weighed heavily on his conscience. But watching former enemies work together to build something new gave him hope that humanity's accidental intervention in galactic affairs might ultimately prove beneficial. Any news from the frontier regions? He asked. Maya Johnson appeared on the observation deck's communication screen. She had been promoted to head of interspecies communications and now coordinated information flow between hundreds of independent groups across the galaxy. Captain, the news is mixed. The Restoration Alliance is still active in the core systems, trying to rebuild the old council structure. They control about 15% of former council territory and are actively hostile to any species that works with humans. However, their recruitment efforts are failing. Most surviving civilizations prefer independence to returning to the old rigid systems. What about our allies? The Free Constellation now includes representatives from 32 different species, not full civilizations like the old council, but groups of individuals and communities that have chosen to work together. We have established trade networks, defense agreements, and cultural exchange programs that would have been impossible under the old system. Dr. Richard Stone, who had become humanity's leading expert on post-council galactic politics, joined their group with his own set of reports. Captain, I have been analyzing the long-term trends, and I think we can safely say that the old galactic civilization is never coming back. The psychological changes are too deep and too widespread. Explain, Jake said. The key insight is that once beings have experienced individual choice and creativity, they cannot go back to purely collective or hierarchical systems without feeling oppressed. The Restoration Alliance may control territory, but they are having trouble controlling minds. Even in their most rigid communities, individuals are asking questions that their ancestors never would have thought to ask. Alex looked thoughtful. So you are saying that humanity's influence will continue to spread even if we do nothing? Exactly. The idea that intelligent beings can thrive as individuals has become part of galactic consciousness. It is spreading through communication networks, through refugee populations, through trade contacts. The Alliance can suppress it locally, but they cannot eliminate it entirely. Communications officer Betty Walsh, who had replaced Maya on the Terra Nova, contacted them from the ship. Captain Morrison, we are receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Brooks on Earth. She says it is urgent. Put her through, Jake. Ordered. Admiral Brooks appeared on the screen, and Jake was pleased to see that she looked healthier than she had during the worst days of the crisis. The constant stream of refugee ships had slowed to manageable levels, and the Colonial Administration had developed effective systems for integrating displaced beings into human society. Captain Morrison, I have news that will interest you. Our long-range sensors have detected signs of new civilizations emerging in former Council territory. Small groups mostly, but they are building new types of societies that combine individual freedom with voluntary cooperation. That sounds encouraging, Admiral. It is. But there is more. We have also detected what appears to be a new form of faster-than-light communication technology being developed by some of these groups. If they succeed, it could revolutionize galactic communications and make the old centralized control systems completely obsolete. Dr. Hamilton leaned forward with interest. Admiral, is this technology being developed by former Council species? That is the interesting part. According to our intelligence reports, it is being developed by mixed species research teams that include humans, former ethereals, independent hierarchs, and several species we had never encountered before. They are calling themselves the Innovation Cooperative. Jake felt a familiar mixture of excitement and concern. Admiral, should we be worried about this development? Not worried, exactly, but aware. Captain Morrison, humanity's role in Galactic affairs is changing again. We are no longer the chaotic newcomers who accidentally destroyed an ancient civilization. We are becoming the coordinators and facilitators of something entirely new. Alex looked out at the construction work around New Harmony Station. So what happens next? Admiral Brooks smiled, and for the first time in months, she looked truly optimistic. Next, we help build the kind of galaxy that our children will want to live in. One where beings can choose their own paths while still working together for common goals. One where diversity is seen as strength rather than threat. As the transmission ended, Jake remained on the observation deck watching the controlled chaos of multi-species construction work. Ships from dozens of different civilizations moved in patterns that would have seemed impossible to the old Council. There were no rigid protocols, no ancient treaties, no unchanging hierarchies. Instead, there were individuals and groups making decisions based on current needs and mutual benefits. It was messy. It was unpredictable. It was sometimes inefficient. But it was also alive in a way that the old galactic civilization had never been. And as Jake watched a group of young beings from 6 different species working together to solve an engineering problem, he realized that humanity had finally found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as the species that had accidentally taught the galaxy that there was more than one way for intelligent beings to live together. The old order had collapsed, but what was emerging from its ruins might be better than anything that had come before. The age of rigid galactic civilization was over. The age of galactic diversity had begun. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, new species were emerging from isolation to join the growing community of beings who believed that freedom and cooperation could coexist. The future was uncertain, as it always was when intelligent beings chose their own paths. But for the first time since humanity had reached for the stars, Jake Morrison felt confident that uncertainty was exactly what the galaxy needed.